Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. No matter who it is upon, because prisoners' lives matter. I said no matter who it is upon, because prisoners' lives matter. They abolished slavery but built prisons. Chattel slavery was real. Over 800,000 black bodies are sitting in prison because of the injustice in the criminal justice system. Over 800,000 black bodies are sitting in prison because of the injustice in the criminal justice system. Justice is not blind to color. Nobody really knows how many wrongfully convicted people are sitting in the prison system in the United States of America. But one thing we do know, they are there. The truth is, many of them will die. With nearly 2.3 million people incarcerated in the United States, statistics say between 20,000 and 100,000 innocent human bodies are sitting in prison right now. What are we going to do? I said, what are we going to do? This generation. It's going to take this generation. My name is Nautica Dennis. My mission in life is to free the innocent, one voice at a time. Hello. It feels so good to be back here on iyouradio, you guys. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, if you celebrate, of course. Before I begin this episode, log on to iyouradio.org and subscribe to our monthly newsletters for monthly updates concerning all of our guest stars. Today, I'm kicking season 12 off with the Salem 3. On April 9th, 2013, Jonathan Thomas, Antoine Parsley, and Ahmaud Butler were found guilty of a murder they did not commit. In order to obtain this conviction, their constitutional rights were violated and false narratives were spun by Salem, New Jersey prosecutors. So before we begin, you guys know I love to highlight my guest stars' humanity, because at the end of the day, they are just like us. And before they were incarcerated, they had a life prior to their incarceration full of experiences as well. So Jonathan, tell us about yourself. Like, where are you from?
Hello, Nautica. My name is Jonathan Thomas. I'm 35 years of age. I'm from Salem, New Jersey.
Okay. Do you have any siblings, Jonathan?
Yeah, I have an older brother on my father's side, but on my mother's side, it's just me.
Nice. And do you have any children or any grandchildren?
No, I don't currently have any children or grandchildren.
All right. And what was life like growing up for you?
Well, I grew up in a single-parent home with me and my mother. My father left when I was still young, so it was just me and my mother holding it down. My mother struggled with drug abuse, so growing up for me, I kind of felt as if the odds was against me very early in life.
Wow. So let's jump into the meat and bones of this case. I want to know, Jonathan, how did you become a suspect in this crime?
Okay, so this case derives from a shooting that took place in 2006 in Salem, New Jersey, where myself and Antoine Parsley was charged. During that process, the victim in this case, Joseph Hayes, gave the Salem police information that myself and Antoine Parsley was involved with that shooting that took place in 2006. That case was resolved sometime in 2007 for a term of 3 years of probation for a weapons offense. The prosecutor's theory for this case is that I retaliated against Joseph Hayes because he gave up information on the 2006 case.
Wow. So you became a suspect because the authorities assumed you had an issue with Mr. Hayes, which stemmed from a previous case in which they claimed Mr. Hayes was a witness against you. This is our speculation at best, but it doesn't surprise me at all, and I say that with all due respect. What I'm saying here is, in New Jersey, it isn't hard for the state to get a grand jury to return a true bill. You know what they say. They'll indict a ham sandwich. And in your situation, that's exactly what they did, with a bunch of testimony that was later recanted. That's why I say what I say. But on another note, I love what New York does pertaining to grand jury hearings. For one, they have a short amount of time to present their case to a grand jury. Two, the person that is being accused of committing the crime, that individual is allowed to have his or her attorney present. And this process is fear for both parties. For you, Mr. Thomas, this is why the state was allowed to use pure speculation in their opening argument to the jury at your trial. This was a move of pure gamingship. So, Mr. Thomas, did the state produce any witnesses or any type of evidence to support their theory that you killed Mr. Hayes because he was supposed to be an alleged witness against you in another case?
Yeah, the state presented a confidential informant, jailhouse informants, and witnesses who came forward years later in order to exchange testimony to get out of jail for their own troubles. In order for these witnesses to succeed, they each came forward with a different story in order to support the state's theory.
Whoa. Because the state failed to produce credible evidence to prove their position at trial that you allegedly killed Mr. Hayes because he was a witness in another case against you, if they didn't have concrete evidence to prove this, then shame on our judicial system. It goes to show you the difference between a rich and guilty individual over against being poor and innocent. For one, your representation isn't the same. At best, you'll be given an overworked and underpaid public defender. And another thing, those who have the financial ability to obtain the best of the best, I'm talking about those attorneys that aren't afraid to challenge the corruptness that's eating at the core of our criminal justice system. I'm talking about attorneys like Robin Lord, Tom Ashley, and the guy out of Philadelphia, what's his name? Brian McManigal. If you don't have these types of individuals fighting for you at trial, the state will be able to use all sorts of gamingship and not be held accountable for their wrongdoing. This is exactly what they did in your case. So, once they arrested you years later and sent you to trial, then used the testimony of Thomas M., Dario M., and Malcolm Moore, Shamik Brown, and all who had criminal records, the state used their testimony to ultimately obtain a conviction. What is so shocking to me is all of these individuals recant. They changed their story. Thomas M. recants and admits that he was a drug addict and someone gave him drugs and money to lie to the police. 2, Daryl M. is facing 2 decades in prison for robbery, and all of a sudden the state gives him favorable treatment in exchange for his testimony. And Shamik Brown does the same as the rest. Jonathan, all of this is very important because it was the statement of Daryl M. and Michael M. that the state used to bolster their case. They originally said they saw you and Omar Butler running with guns and fleeing in a vehicle which was allegedly driven by Antoine Parsley. Then they recant. They take their entire story back. That is major in your case. This is huge, man. Then there's the statement of Leslie B. Her statement contradicts Michael Moore's statement. I want to make this abundantly clear. All of these individuals recant and take back what they originally said. If that's the case, I have a 2-part question. Did you present this as newly discovered evidence? And if so, what was the court's ruling concerning this?
Well, a lot of this information that was in my favor at trial was already known by the state. However, they still presented fraud upon the courts to obtain a conviction for myself and co-defendants. Throughout the years, many witnesses have recanted, and I have since discovered a substantial amount of evidence that would have changed the verdict of any jury. All this information is currently being presented on my appeal to the courts.
Wow. First of all, I want to say, for all the cases that I worked on and an individual is finally vindicated, one of the main reasons that they are released from prison is from a witness or witnesses recanting and taking back their statements. That's why there has to be, from a legislative position, new laws put in place that allows a defendant while on appeal to present this type of evidence to the courts outside of it being a Brady issue, but one that requires a hearing in front of an impartial judge to hear the evidence and make a ruling on the record. In situations like yours, the credibility of a witness that recants, the judge should not be the only one to make a decision on credibility without first conducting a hearing. That's just what I believe. After looking through your file, Jonathan, I took notice that you presented a few names to your trial attorney as alibi witnesses. Those who could have vouched that you were at an album release party at the time of the victim's death and could not have been in 2 places at one time. These individuals, all who were there at the party, would have testified that you were with them. My question to you is, why didn't your trial attorney use this as your defense rather than attack the witness's credibility?
My trial attorney was deficient for for not pursuing or investigating my alibi defense. I communicated my alibi defense thoroughly with my trial attorney, giving him the names and addresses of people who could vouch for my whereabouts the night of the shooting.
Wow.
With him always responding as if he had everything under control. However, he was always so focused on impeaching the credibility of the state's witness because he knew the state's case against me was built on fabrication, sloppy police work, and third-party guilt.
Wow. Jonathan, I'll be the first to say, listen to me when I say this, your trial attorney was very lazy at best. Not only lazy, but he failed to meet his obligations in providing you with effective assistance of counsel. His job was to investigate and interview your alibi witnesses. When a trial attorney fails to do so, not only do they provide ineffective assistance at trial counsel, but they allow you to be subjected to a weak defense at trial. Most pool attorneys who lack the passion and compassion to fight on behalf of their client do exactly what your trial attorney did. Attack the credibility of a witness. This is a weak and lazy defense, especially when you have alibi witnesses like you had in your case that would have testified that you were at an album release party and not out committing a murder. It goes back to what I always tell my guest stars. When you come from impoverished communities, the ghetto or the hood, whatever political term you want to call it, and you are black, you are already perceived as being guilty.
We're going to end the episode right here and pick up where we left off next week. You can catch Jonathan Thomas and I next week live on iyouradio podcast at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. PST. Do not forget to log on to iyouradio.org and subscribe to iyoUradio's monthly newsletter. Thank you guys for listening to
iyouradio.